Hi, this is Larry Bauer, Chief Executive Officer of the Family Medicine Education Consortium, and I'm excited today to be talking to Dr. Sam Zager, who's a family physician in Portland, Maine. He works at Martins Point Healthcare. Sam, it's great to be talking with you.
Thank you so much, Larry. It's really an honor. I very much appreciate all the work you've done with Fmec over the years, and it's great to be here.
Thank you. So I think we'll start with the exciting news and then maybe work backwards. So you've run for office in the state of Maine and you succeeded. Tell us about that.
Well, indeed, it's a bit of a new endeavor. I this summer prevailed in a primary, and the way this district here in Maine works out, it's an unopposed general election. So the primary was the election in essence. So as long as I keep breathing, I will presumably take a seat in the 130th Maine legislature in December.
Is awesome. And can I ask which side of the political world, Democrat, Republican?
I'm a Democrat. I invite people to visit my campaign website at samzager.org. That's SAMZ as in zebra, AGER.org. And it's got all sorts of information about my party affiliation, as well as my background and the issues that are important to me.
So speaking of background, why don't you tell people a little bit about your background? Maybe go back before medical school?
Sure. I guess you would say that I'm one of the unconventional, I was one of the unconventional medical students. Medicine is a second career for me. I actually spent 11 years in uniform. I was in the Navy. 6 days after high school graduation, took the oath of office as a midshipman at the United States Naval Academy, and then served for 7 years, both afloat and ashore in the naval service. During my younger, my teenage years, I had a very strong conviction that I wanted to be of service to those around me. And military service, I recognized, was merely one form of service. It happened to be what most spoke to me at the time, but a few of events and things happened over the years, and I eventually, I guess, felt another calling. And I can distinctly remember a moment where it really crystallized for me, and I resolved to become a doctor. I didn't know what kind of doctor. I didn't know what being a doctor really entailed. I just felt a deep conviction that this was going to be the next chapter in my service to those around me. And I ended up falling in love with it. And I ended up falling in love with family medicine. And so that's what I do.
And where'd you go to medical school?
I went to Harvard Medical School.
Your residency?
My residency, I completed at Maine Medical Center, which is a phenomenal program. I'd be happy to talk to anybody who has an interest in family medicine about the program. I'm very honored to have been a graduate, and also to have been had a role in helping to train medical students and residents over the years.
And you told me a piece of information a short time ago about the role the FMEC meeting played in your career development.
Yes. Well, so it's probably no secret to your listeners that Harvard does not produce tons of family doctors historically. However, that doesn't mean that somebody can't fall in love with family medicine in such a so-called orphan school. And I found that I learned of FMEC and the and other associations of family doctors from the family docs in Boston that I got to meet. Kathy Miller, one of my chief mentors, who I think you know. And I started attending the conferences, and I remember going to, I think I went to 6 or 8 in a row. and just found my home. I felt like the diversity of the folks that attended, the creativity, the commitment, the devotion that people had to their communities, all sorts of communities, as from Virginia and DC North and here in Maine and from Ohio East. I just got to meet people from all sorts of communities serving as family doctors in all sorts of capacities, and it really excited me. So that was part of how FMEC helped me grow as a family doctor, as an aspiring family doctor. And it also was a forum for thought of new ways of doing things, such as looking at, I remember that there was a keynote about hotspots in Camden, New Jersey, that was profound to me. I remember all sorts of things that this forum of thought that FMEC convened was really important, I believe, because family doctors fundamentally are rooted in our communities, and there are so many needs that communities have, and so many ways that a family doc can contribute to their own community. It was as well a forum for me to bring my own ideas up, and I can remember several times presenting at FMEC conferences, and that was another way that I think it helped me grow as a trainee and a physician, because doctors not only treat people but also collaborate to figure out ways of doing things, and that requires a forum. And FMEC has been a terrific forum for me and many other people.
So, Sam, why don't you tell folks a little bit about your practice situation? What are you doing as a family physician in your community?
I have basically two practices, and then there's my advocacy work. I consider all of that within the realm of my practice of medicine. I'm a generalist, so my practice, I see adults and kids at Martin's Point, which is here in Portland, and I also I do procedures, skin procedures, vasectomies. That's an important part of my my identity as a family doc is helping people make decisions throughout the life cycle that are right for them. I also serve as a family physician at our local high school. Deering High School is 3/4 of a mile from our house. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. And being an embedded doctor in the school-based health centers, which in itself is a very interesting model of care, where you're in the schools, you're part of the school community, you're aware of the rhythms of the school community, is hugely valuable. It also, as somebody who has been the chair of our practices resiliency committee, I have found that having the diversity of ways that a person can be a doctor as a family doctor helps support my own spirit and helps me, I think it protects me against burnout, and practicing in the pro bono work that I do in the school-based health centers, as well as the variety of ways that I practice at Martin's Point, are all part of that for me. I should also mention, here in Maine and in so many communities, states and communities across the country, we have an awful opioid epidemic still, even though COVID is rightly on the top of people's minds. We still have tremendous need for those services, and that's something that I have been involved with, and it's part of my practice for many years now.
Great. So how'd you get involved in advocacy work? What got you going?
The first advocacy work I think I would really that I did was about 10 years ago now. oh gosh, it's hard to believe. But 10 years ago, I was a medical student in Boston, and I heard that there was a proposal to save money in the city budget by cutting the library budget. And initially, that seemed to make sense. This was in the aftermath of the financial meltdown, from the 2008 financial meltdown, and local government was struggling. But as I found out more about it, it was not done in an equitable fashion. And the proposal would have shut down library branches in poorer and less educated, less advantaged neighborhoods. That just didn't seem fair, didn't seem right. And I joined a grassroots organization, just some community folks, community members that wanted to get together and oppose this sort of approach. And I happened to be the only one there from the, who's a in medical training. Although there was a psychologist who named Brandon Abbs, who was spearheading it. But I said at some point early on, I said, what if we, as part of this effort, in addition to the moral argument, also marshaled a health argument, a public health argument, that libraries are good for their communities. And like I think a physician needs to do, had to turn to the evidence. So I dove into PubMed and the literature on what is written about libraries and health and literacy, and where these all intersect, and found that there was a body of work, not about libraries per se, but about literacy and about social connections, about how social ties that people have in their communities are really important to health. So I developed a one-pager, an evidence-based one-pager with about 2 pages of footnotes based in the medical and public health literature, and went all around Boston talking to whoever I could find in the health establishment in Boston. These are deans of medical schools and people who, there was somebody who had received a Nobel Prize, Nobel Peace Prize. These were people who had received the national scientific awards, prominent people in healthcare, to see if they would agree with this one pager, this essentially consensus statement on the value of libraries for communities and the value of libraries for health. The two mechanisms chiefly being through literacy and through social connections. And I was pleased to find that every single person that I approached believed that this message was important, that it was timely, and that it was evidence-based. So I collected the co-signatories and presented it to the City Council, Boston City Council. This would have been in June of 2010, and it was one of the components that seemed to win the day. I certainly can't take credit for the whole thing. I think if anyone would, that would be Brandon Abbs and the folks that were more centrally involved in it. But the health piece was a novel approach. And as far as I can tell, and I've been looking at this subsequently, because I ended up doing some research in residency. My residency project, research project, was on this as well subsequently. And as far as I can tell, it was the world's first consensus statement about the intersection of health and public libraries, and how libraries are central to their communities. That literature and that line of thinking has actually taken off in the last decade. But I have to point to that as the beginning of my involvement, community advocacy involvement, and it was at the local level, and it was something that was kind of avant-garde as far as the medical literature is concerned.
Wow, that's a pretty cool story. So maybe you can send a copy of that one pager to me, and we can make that available to people if they would like that.
Sure.
So we're happy to spread that around. And so from there, how did you evolve in your advocacy work and what made you decide to run for office?
Well, there was a little hiatus there because I went, I graduated and had to go to, I did residency training, which was fantastic in its own right, but I didn't do a whole lot of advocacy in residency. What I did do is some more research, and I ended up doing a collaborative research project with Maine Health, which was where the parent organization of our residency, and the local public library, the Portland Public Library. And this also was a novel approach to, and this was IRB approved, and to do a retrospective study to look at quantitatively, for the first time, to quantitatively look at the intersection of health and public libraries. And because I had, in doing the one pager in Boston, there was an evidence basis, but it was not quantified. It was not not as direct as I was really looking for. And as we do when we see that there's a gap in the literature, we try to fill it. So I tried to do that, and ended up publishing it in 2014. It got published. I had finished residency by that point, but I took a little, I guess, hiatus from advocacy, and I wasn't planning to do a whole lot of advocacy in the way that I am now. I really just was responding to what I saw around me and how I was moved to get involved. But after I started practice and saw over and over and over again how the things that we try to address as family doctors have so many upstream factors that affect them, whether it's access to healthcare, equitable access to healthcare, whether it's the way the environmental decisions we make, or if it's a gun safety issue. I mean, there's so many things that affect the issues that matter to our patients, that I started to look upstream at those factors and realized that a lot of decisions that are affecting the patient in front of me were actually, the decisions were made at the state level months or years or even decades earlier. So I started to speak up and write op-eds and testify at hearings and organize other doctors and other allied health professionals. An organization called Maine Providers Standing Up for Healthcare really took off in 2017. Early in 2017, and I became very involved in that and ultimately led that for some years. And the website there is standupme.org, standupme as in Maine, .org. So people can see what that all those efforts had to do with, and that was both at the state level and then the national level. Because in Maine we had Senator Susan Collins, who was a key vote in 2017 when the Affordable Care Act was being threatened. There were 3 key votes in that year that really depended on 3 Republican senators. All that was needed was 3 Republican senators to oppose the repeal bills that had a lot of GOP energy behind them. And Senator Collins was one of them that went against her party. And so that was, she said, in large part because she was listening to healthcare providers and listening to the patients in her state. And we, Maine Providers Standing Up for Healthcare, was singularly focused at that time on her vote on those issues to protect the Affordable Care Act. Since then, there was MaineCare, or which is our version of Medicaid expansion, which we expanded at the ballot box. We were the first state to do Medicaid expansion at the ballot box. That's one of the elements of the Affordable Care Act that permits states to expand Medicaid, and we did that at the ballot box. And our organization was part of the grassroots door-to-door and campaign that was part of the coalition that helped do that. We've done a lot of stuff for reproductive rights and have tried to stand up for issues pertaining to children's health as well. So people can go to standupme.org to get more on that story. And then outside of that organization, I did some other advocacy work, for instance, about gun safety. That's, with all the awful deaths that occur from firearms, suicide, homicide. There's all sorts of awful domestic violence connection. Certainly, being in schools and school shootings influenced my thinking on that as well. And so I weighed in on that. So even outside of the main provider standing up for healthcare, I found myself feeling compelled, feeling like somebody's got to speak up, and maybe I have something to say about what ended up being about a dozen different issues. And at a certain point, people turned to me and said, Sam, you keep showing up at these hearings, and you keep writing things that have some get traction. Why don't you consider running yourself as a state rep or something? And so I thought about it and tried to think about how I could integrate that into my practice and my and my family life. And hey, kiddo.
Hi. I know you can go to Big Sky.
Okay, I'm in the middle of an interview, but that sounds great.
Yeah, I know, but like Mom's in front of me
Okay.
too.
Oh,
This is my daughter, Daphne.
hi, Daphne.
Have fun.
So Sam, I want to bring things to closure here. So how does it feel to be, you figured out obviously a way to maintain your practice and to be involved in the state legislature. So how does that feel?
I have a whole variety of feelings. It's an incredible honor, and to have the trust of the voters in this district to represent this district in the legislature. It's very humbling. It's also a bit scary. I feel the weight of all the issues that we experience as a community, as a state, and certainly in this country. It's not unlike being a doctor who is sitting there with a patient or a family in your exam room, and you take on the burden of their problems. You are there, whether it's home visit or whether it's sitting in your exam room. You're there with people in moments of tremendous gravity, and so I feel that for the issues that are facing our community. I'm also very excited because I know that there are ways through all of this, just like in the military, and when we would navigate a ship through shoal waters. There's certainly dangers out there, but also by being evidence-based, by working together, by staying focused on the ultimate goal. There's a way to get through things safely, and so I do believe that as colossal as the issues that we're facing, climate change and racial and ethnic oppression and disparities, among a host of other issues, even though these issues are colossal, I do believe that there's a way forward, and that we can truly, by working together in government, help people live their best lives. And that's what I'm trying to do is fold that into my practice of medicine.
So I just think what you're doing is fantastic. And I'm hoping that others may hear this interview and appreciate the opportunities that are available. And I think family docs, with your generalist expertise and your strong interpersonal skills, have a great deal to offer at a whole variety of levels. So I want to thank you, Sam, for spending some time with me today. And I wish you good luck. And I'm going to stay in touch and kind of see how things are going. I'm fascinated by what you're doing.
I really appreciate it, Larry. I would also just like to quickly say one thing, which is an appeal to any of your listeners of how much credibility family doctors have in government. And I know that a lot of times family doctors don't see themselves as the real experts And I think that's, it doesn't have to be like that, because family doctors are experts in human beings, experts in our communities, experts in medicine and science. And because of the oath that we take, the Hippocratic oath that we take, and the way that we live that through our devotion to our patients and our devotion to our practice, and always honing and refining and improving the practice of medicine, we have incredible credibility when we testify, when we call our legislators, when we write an opinion piece in our local newspaper. People really do listen to family doctors because of who we are and what we do with all our labors and our efforts. So I hope that people will take that on board. And I would love to hear from anybody who has any thoughts about that, or would like guidance or suggestions on how to best do that in their own communities. People can email me at samzager@gmail.com. And I would love to hear from other family docs, or residents, students, or other folks who are in the FMEC universe and would like to get more involved, because it's so much easier than people think. It's far easier than anything we do on rounds or in clinic, in terms of having an impact and a lot of credibility.
Fantastic. Sam, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, Larry.